So this week's talk is called How to Stop Beating Yourself Up. And as always, I have some quotes to begin with. You yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve your love and affection. Mahatma Gandhi. I'm sorry, Buddha. that is a Buddha quote. Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Another Buddha quote. And lastly, to abandon the truth in your hour of need is to not understand the truth. Why these three quotes when I'm talking about beating yourself up? Number one, because beating yourself up is a function of not loving yourself. Number two, beating yourself up comes out of anger. And number three, beating yourself up comes out of forgetting what is true. And what is true? That we are powerful, creative, spiritual beings and anything is possible. But how? How do we remember the truth when we're immersed in the horrible circumstances that wind us floating in self-doubt, anger, upset, and any other emotion that isn't loving? And sure, when we feel these types of emotions, we usually have a lot of evidence to back up the reality behind it. That person really did trespass you. You might really have that horrible disease. Your lover or partner really did sleep with your best friend. Horrible things. Or what about those other, bigger things like genocide, children starving or being mistreated, the environment? These are real issues that some of us get our backs up and are loaded with the ammunition of good reasons. How does this relate to beating ourselves up? Most of the time when we're pointing our finger at somebody else because of our upset, that same upset is seeping it back onto us. Just because we think we're pointing our finger, that doesn't mean that we wind up feeling guilt-free. We think about things like what we could have done differently, what we could have done better, what we should have done, what we shouldn't have done. My son has asked me, aren't we supposed to critique ourselves? Isn't that how we improve? My answer is yes and no. Sure, we want to improve, but not from a place of thinking and believing that we were not good enough to begin with. Loving ourselves is the art of always knowing that we are good enough and that shitting on ourselves is never healthy, never loving, and never useful. So, do we want to be better? Of course. But whatever the circumstance, it is always important to remember that you have done your best already. It's not a matter of being critical. It's simply a matter of improvement. Now, some of you may think that's just semantics, but I am here to tell you that it is not just a matter of semantics. That what we are talking about here is power and love. Our power grows the more we love. Our power shrinks the more we beat ourselves up. It's really that simple. You want to get better at something? Practice and love yourself. No matter what the circumstances, no matter how dire, it is possible to get into a place of loving yourself. And so self-criticism and frustration toward yourself as others will not get you the results you want. Remembering is the key. And so what is it we want to remember? That every moment, not just the ones that passed, we can do something else. Now. And now, and now. Remembering that it isn't what you do first, it's what you do second. And so, what do you do second? Maybe what you do second is continue what you did first. That's your choice. In an arena of infinite possibilities and possible choices, maybe the one you chose is to continue doing what you already did do. Or second, maybe the second thing you do is beating yourself up. That's your choice in an arena of endless power. and love, that could be your choice. But it may be something else as well. You can make a different choice. How do we stop beating ourselves up? We make a different choice. So my wife Ashley has an 11-year-old daughter who is incredible at and brilliant at finding my buttons and pushing them. She has figured out exactly how to get my goat and how to get me going since I first arrived 2 years ago. I mean, she's really very good at this. And one of the ways in which she gets me is she starts yelling in my face. And so initially what happened when I first showed up is I started yelling back at her. And so we would get into this shouting match. Now, afterwards, what I did second was spend a lot of time beating myself up. I felt really bad about how I was behaving. And this went on for a couple of months before I finally remembered the idea that what I do second is up to me. And so I started to apply that. So I'd have my initial reaction. She'd push my buttons. She'd be yelling in my face. And I'd start yelling back. But then all of a sudden I'd remember, okay, what I'm going to do is something different. What I'm going to do second is something different. So I'd stop yelling and I'd walk out of the room. Now, what I could have done after that was beat myself up for yelling in the first place. But what I did instead was pat myself on the back for doing something different. And because I appreciated myself, loved myself, I was able to remember that tactic quicker and quicker and quicker until over time, what has happened is either my initial reaction of outburst is under 2 seconds, or I have no outburst at all and simply leave the room. But this came with practice and dedication to what I was going to do second and not getting on my own case for what I did first. Because what I have learned for myself is that the more I apply myself to what I do second, over time it actually does become what I do first. When I put in the practice and the loving myself, because that's where the power is. It's not what you do first, it's what you do second. And the stronger what you do second gets, ultimately it will become what you do first. I think it's like playing the guitar. Maybe this will work for you too. So let's say you want to become as good a guitar player as Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin's fame. The first time you pick up the guitar, you're not going to beat yourself up because you're already not as good as Jimmy Page. No, it takes practice. So does the art and practice of what you do second. But you continue to practice that riff over and over and over, and you're going to get better at it, whether you had any talent at doing it at first or not. And this is another divine truth. Any dream you have that is yours to do, you have all the resources you need to accomplish that dream, whether you start out thinking you have any talent at it or not. I learned this through my own journey in the music business. Now, some of you have heard this story before, but for those of you who haven't, my first gig, when I went out, I decided I was going to go out and play music in the world. And so I practiced for about a year. I went out and played my first gig, and I was booed off the stage. Drunks at the bar booed me right off the stage. I went home, tail between my legs, and continued to practice and continue to practice. About 6 months later, I went out and did an open mic, and there happened to be an agent in the audience. And the agent came backstage after the gig, and she says to me, you really have no talent at this, but you're cute, so why don't you try acting? Now, I was not a quitter, so I kept working at it and kept working at it and kept going out and gigging and kept going out and gigging and put bands together and kept at it until 7 years later, I am reading in a newspaper a review of one of my shows that opens with the line, What a natural Cliff Rubin must be to have played the show he did last night. I went from 7 years from having no talent at all to a natural. You can too. This is how it works. When you apply yourself, you can get incredibly good at the art of what you do second. You can start out with no talent at all for thinking that you can get a hold of your triggers or buttons. And yet, what you do second, if you focus on that, will grow and grow and grow, so that what you do second is never, never, never beating yourself up. Every morning we are born again. What we do today matters most. That's another quote by Buddha. Start fresh. Start now. Take this moment. Don't focus on what you did initially. Focus on the fact you have choice for what you do second. And practice, practice, practice. And you will never beat yourself up again. Thank you. I love you.
You are the face of God. I hold you in my heart. You are a part of me. You are the face of God.